Please correct the article immediately. These were the words of Hans Niemann about a week ago on Twitter. He's telling the chess mafia, as he calls them, in this case, it's this guy, Tarje, who writes a lot of stuff, especially on chess.com, to correct this article, which was saying that Niemann wasn't going to do the lie detector polygraph test because Niemann said he wasn't going to do it. However, that's because he wasn't happy. Let's jump back here. Few of the conditions and things that Dubov was asking for, his behavior and the logistics. That's why he didn't want to do it. But now they've sorted it. Apparently it's back on and gonna happen soon. Watch this space. Now we've got to recap another game from this incredible match. This was played about, 3 weeks ago now in Russia. Hans Niemann versus Daniil Dubov. Blitz chess over the board. What games they were, and we're picking up with this one here. It's game 16 or something like that. Niemann's in the middle of a comeback. Boy, is this exciting chess. He's got the white pieces here. He kicks off with the king pawn. Best by test, as Fischer said. We get this very solid opening, and now the Gucci Reza piano played. This one follows d3, bishop e7, castles, but no king safety fist bump. Exploded out. The players aren't on the best terms. We see rook e1, d6. Always push your rook pawn down the chess club if you want to look like an absolute boss in front of your peers. We now see this bishop challenging the other, supported with the knight takes, h6 because obviously bro, and now you could play like c3 or h3, but Niemann goes for something a bit different. He plays the bishop out here. What's going on? This rook develops, and before Daniil can do anything else, Niemann plows forth. We get this one completely forgetting which way it's supposed to move, but it does open the eyes of the rook, despite the fact that dad's ashamed it's already back home. Knight e3 spins round to look at the light squares, and this pawn could be pushing soon. Big clamp on the position, so Daniil doesn't wait around. He goes d5 for the high five. Kasparov rushes in, gives him one. What a lucky guy. We get b5 kicking this one. It centralizes and things are hotting up. Why not take here? Well, not ideal. Pawn recaptures. There's a massive clamp on the white pawn structure. You're opening the rook. Not how to go. So instead, takes here was played. Now we see takes with check. Queen recaptures, and white's actually got the pawn covered. Black can't just simply win that one back. c4 could be on the way if you're not careful. So the tried and tested move here is pawn e4. We saw the players debate this variation a few times. Now you don't want to be taking because the knight hops in really nicely. The pawn's still weak. Big counterplay despite the fact you're a pawn down. Bishop soon streaming out. So we saw queen e2 played by Hans Niemann. Again, you don't want to take. The queen comes in and supports the d pawn once more. So bishop c5, order of the day here. We get rook a d1 blasting against the queen, and so now takes is played. Why would you give up the bishop? Well, the pawn is now ripe for the picking. How to capture? Either way is playable. Hans goes for this one here. Now after takes, and knight takes here, then bishop isn't immediately hit. Plus, you've got these connected central pawns. You can start pushing, and Hans does it straight away. Knight f4 could have been a problem otherwise. Now we see this one rotate backwards. This bishop hits the wonderful diagonal. The rooks are blasting. The pawns could be running like space invaders. White is for choice, but great play now from Daniil. He rotates the knight around, activates the queen. Hans goes for the double stack, but the king does a bit of safety, and now, not the greatest of moves. d4 is a bit better. Keep those pawns nicely connected. Somehow just looks good. But instead, we get this one, pawn e5 here. You give up this square. Daniil pounces, creates the 8-legged freak in the center of the board. That's the Black Widow spider there. Not sure why it's a freak, but we called it that now. d4 is played, and now, usually very, very stinky, pawn f6. Ben Hans Feingold winces away here, doesn't like it at all, because look at the damage you've done to the king side on the light squares. We get queen c2, immediately targeting that. Takes is played. You can't yet do something like this, e4 could come, so takes is played, and now big opportunity missed. Black could play queen c5 check. King goes, then you centralize the rook with taking because you can't do this, or your queen drops off. Black has equalized, a pawn ahead, doing fine despite the king safety, but missed. This one was played, blockading the pawn, but it gets the double question marks of doom. Look at Ival Barovic. There's a great line here. Hans misses it, but he could have doubled the rooks. Say Black, now not that one, steps back the king. This is the line I was looking at. Well, how about this for a move? Whoops, let's go here. This is what I was looking at. Rook f6 played. And the idea is, if captures, then there's no protection here. You crash through, and this actually leads to a checkmate in just a moment. f7's on the way. You unleash the monstrous bishop. So after this move of queen e6, that was the way to go, but missed. Hans goes queen e4, centralizing, does cover the pawn, hit b7, etc. But now Black can challenge this file. Hans jumps away here. You could save one of these pawns, but Daniil decides to go for some king safety first. This is why he's such a dangerous blitz player, always searching for the initiative. We see pawn h3. The knight rotates back into the game. Still neither player wants to take a pawn or protect a pawn. Knight h7, and finally Hans Niemann takes the plunge here, gobbles like a juicy platter of
mushrooms.
And now you could go knight g5 immediately or activate the queen, but instead what do we see? Queen d5 here. Is Daniil Magnus Carlsen in disguise? He was his second once upon a time, trying to get the queens off here. He's much worse now. Niemann denies it, says no, I want to attack. You could take the b5 pawn, but instead we see the rook attacked, saved, and now the pawn is blockaded. Now you don't have time to go b6, or your queen actually gets trapped. That's not ideal. And this one here is also showing the epic power of the knight as a blockader of the pawn. It can still jump over, influence the game despite the fact it's blockading. But what do we see played? This rook sliding, doubling once more on the f-file. This pawn does drop. Now the queen slides back. Triple stacks, 19 points of pressure barreling down here. And after queen c4, keeping tabs on this one, we get queen g3, queen e4, not the most precise, but Daniil's playing on seconds compared to Hans's like minute and a half. He's dominating this game. Rook e3, don't Botez gambit, and now Hans invades with the queen here. It's given the really bad miss, but we'll crack on here. This is blitz chess. Not obvious why it's a bad move. We get queen c5, pin and win, baby. This one therefore supports, and suddenly the knight activates. This is one of the challenges with where the queen went a-wandering. It saves itself, but now the excellent knight d3 hits the rook on e1 and interrupts the connection here, so the bishop is about to drop off the board. How do you protect everything? What if you go say rook f1, natural, well this one's dropping. So that's why rook d1, saying you take the queen on the bishop on c3, I take your knight, but this is the moment. This is why Daniil Dubov practices down the park, getting those calisthenics done, getting the muscle ups in, the tricep dips, for moments like this when he can absolutely flex on the board with moves like knight f2. That is absolutely awesome. Saying you take me, I take your rook, and if you take my rook first, well now I take your queen. Sure, you get 2 rooks for the queen, but the problem is that now I'm about to win this one too, and this one too, and it's just absolutely awful. You can't even go king f2. The knight covers the square. So that is not a playable line. Let's run it back. Instead, Hans takes on f2 here. He goes an exchange down after Daniil captures there. We get e6 pushing forward. This is the big danger. And after queen g5, you can now also run with this one and really trouser your opponent. You can't handle both trouser legs, both pawns, but it wasn't pushed. Hans goes for this one instead. Rook d7 spins back. h4 looking to distract that queen from the defense of the pawn, but what does Daniil do? He takes it anyway, saying, what's your point? I'm winning a pawn here. How are you actually stopping me? Well, this is absolutely awesome. We've not seen a move this beautiful since Peter Lecco and Jan Nepomniachtchi hit the discotheque last Saturday night. Even Fabi made his way out for a small drink or two. Hans plays the move of bishop takes on g7. It's given the brilliancy, because if queen captures, not played, you pick up here, you're doing really well. If king captures, not played, well, there's no knockout blow, but you just invade, you get the checks going, you win the queen here, and you've got a queen for 2 rooks and a dangerous running outside pawn. Now, it's kind of a levelish position. You know, we'll stop it here. This is a sample line, but it weirds it up. Who knows what would have happened. But after takes on g7, instead Daniil sidesteps with the king. We now see bishop e5, queen e6 apparently best, but queen f7 check played. If in doubt, check the king right. Now more checks, given the runaround, but there's a big problem. Hans Niemann has got such a powerful bishop, an open king, a running pawn, you just can't deal with everything. Rook d5 apparently best, but rook g3 to g7 is coming. We see this one tried, but now there's a problem, because after rook g3 check, king f8, you can't step here or here, those diagonals are covered. Now you can go takes with check, this pawn recaptures, queen d4 looks for some nasty ideas, and after this king covers the pawn, Hans Niemann shuts the trap on that king with rook g7. He's winning a queen by force here, and that spells the end of the game. Daniil resigned. It went to an absolute climax. If you don't know what happened, have a look at the video on screen. Spoiler alert, the result is coming though. Daniil did take it just by 1 game, and that's why Hans is having to do this lie detector test. Do smash subscribe if you enjoyed, really helps me out. Thanks very much to those who've taken out the channel membership, also supporting via donations, hugely appreciated. And have a look at that video on screen if you want to see the epic climax of Daniil versus Hans. Thanks very much, cheers.